Recording in progress.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the June 22nd, 2026 special meeting of the Pasadena City Council's Finance Committee. We'll start with the calling of the roll.
Councilmember Cole?
Present.
Councilmember Hampton? Not here. Councilmember Masuda?
Here.
Mayor Gordo?
Here.
We have a quorum of the Finance Committee.
Okay. And we will jump right into our agenda, starting with, well, there's no public comment for matters not on the agenda because it's a special meeting, so we'll jump right to item 1. Authorization of the city manager to enter into a contract with International Trade Education Programs, DBA.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. This is Michael Trogan, the Career Services Administrator with the Career Services Department under City Manager. And this is just a contract we recently reached out to see if we could support a nonprofit organization in doing summer internships. If you want to go, sir, slides. So it's an organization called EXP. They are a education providing program. They have a large summer internship program. They reached out to us because they are a small organization that has some issues with administering it. So they have proposed to give us a contract for $300,000 to help them administer the program. It's for high school students to do summer internships. Up to 150 students will get 80 hours, and the urgency is to start it now because obviously the summer just started there. So we are just requesting that the council approve the manager to execute the agreement and any other documents, and that we start it with even though we're almost done with this funding year, we would like to get it into the fiscal year for 26, just so we can start expenditures right away.
Sure. Questions, comments, Mr. Cole?
This seems incredibly laudable. It's a little difficult to follow from the staff report. It may be my lack of understanding. What's the source, the underlying source of this money?
So it's their money. They get private foundation money and they write grants, and so they have the funding. They just don't have the infrastructure to fully implement the funding they need support.
It was clear that they had a grant. It just wasn't
Yeah.
clear where they got the money.
Oh,
so-
they're a mixture of, because they're the industry council, so they get donations from businesses directly, and they also write grants. So it's a mixture of their funds.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That's helpful understanding. I'm prepared to support this. This, first of all, seems to be very urgent, and second of all, seems very laudable.
So the foundation dollars are in hand for them?
Yes.
Okay, and what's the total amount that the kids will be paid? I
So
don't see that.
it would be the 18 minimum wage, so the 1847 that's going up on July 1st, times 80 hours. I'd have to do quick math.
Well, so what, are we?
Oh, you're saying what percentage of the overall
Yeah.
contract? It is about 85 to 90% of the contract will go to the young people.
Okay,
Yep, and then we will get fees to help administer it, and there's no other cost.
okay. That makes sense. This is great. One question I had is, why aren't we used to do this in-house in another life. We had the Summer Youth Employment Training Program. We had out of Human Services. But it makes sense that since they have, so my question was going to be, why aren't we doing it in-house? But it sounds like they have the money and we don't. And so,
And we do have 3 other grants that do youth employment programs.
Right.
So this would be our 4th.
okay. Okay,
Question.
motion, Mr. Masuda?
Is the Workforce Investment Act still working on this kind of a program with internships and?
Yeah.
Oh, they are?
Yes.
And is there a kind of reimbursement for the employer as well?
There's no reimbursement of the employer. We serve as the employer of record. The Workforce Board does, so it comes at no cost to the employer.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. Sounds like a good program. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay,
I think it would be valuable before next summer to have a better feel for the internship programs. I think we could, as a city, benefit more from not just internships that benefit the students, but internships that benefit the students and us. So, sometime in the
Sure.
fall or winter to have a better understanding of the range of programs that we have, I think would be helpful. But I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
thank you.
That's it.
Okay.
Moved and seconded, without objection. Matters approved, thank you. Next, we'll move on to item 2. And item 2 is an amendment to the 27 Capital Improvement Program. Budget.
Hello, Mayor and council members. My name's Greg DeVink, the Public Works Director. We do have a presentation. Historically, you haven't wanted to see them at these meetings, but we can.
Yeah, this item is typically put on if anybody has questions. The materials show the amendments. If you have questions on the particular amendments, now's the time. Mr. Cole?
Yeah, I think that these are pretty straightforward. Two questions. One, and this is for DOT. We tend to do our public safety and traffic safety improvements on a case-by-case basis. I've argued for a more comprehensive approach. How did we end up with the item 3, $300,000 of what I assume is fungible money, right? It's not a grant for that particular project. It's money that we could use for a variety of traffic safety. This one happens to benefit my district, so I'm not questioning its validity, but how did we land on that project out of all the projects?
I don't
in the
have the
city?
specific answer. It is grant money being appropriated to a specific project, but how that was exactly chosen, I don't have that. I don't,
Okay.
if anyone's here who knows that.
Okay. The second question is, let's see if this is, yes, number 5. Here's another $500,000 for a plan. And again, I think this is fungible money. I think we could put this to other park uses. And so the question is, why do we need yet another plan for the Arroyo? Why aren't we spending $500,000 on actually doing things in the Arroyo?
Sure. Thanks, Councilmember Cole. Don Petchara, Stormwater Program Administrator. This area of the Arroyo, as you know, is very important to a lot of our community members. And so Measure A is looking at providing funding specifically for areas that can look at stormwater management, invasive species removal, trail enhancements, and so forth. And so because this area is very important to our community members, and they had looked at some of the other plans that are in the Arroyo, but looking at updating it with some of the integration of those plans that are already here. This feasibility is looking at putting all those together in a certain area. So it's the Colorado Bridge down to the Loma Bridge. I think it's 38 square miles of area specifically in our city to see if we can upgrade the existing plans with opportunities that could turn into something like a project later on. So this was specifically identified for this area of the city, and the funding was appropriated for this area.
And what was the process that landed us on this?
The application process?
No, I mean, how did we, out of all of the things that we have to do in this city, was it Parks and Recreation Commission? Was it Planning Commission? Was it staff? Who was it?
Sure.
Who is spearheading the need for yet another plan? Because we have the same thing with Department of Transportation, right? We're now doing a plan to integrate our plans. And my frustration is that we do a lot of planning in this city, and oftentimes, unless we can get a grant, we just don't do any of the things. And I would love to spend money in the Arroyo, but I'm not convinced that we need yet another plan. So who thinks this is a good idea?
So this is being spearheaded by Public Works, though it's in partnership with Parks and Recs. We looked specifically in this area because, as you know, stormwater management is really important in our city. But there was a push from some community members to look at true floodplain management. And this area specifically was identified in a previous U.S. Army Corps study that's being done with the county as an ample area to do floodplain management because of its flat nature. There's also a lot of invasive species, and as you know, with the recent fire, it's very important for our city to look for restoration opportunities. So it incorporated 5 different areas: floodplain management, stormwater management, trail enhancement, invasive species removal, and I always forget one of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Educational and trail signage. So we are creating a stakeholder group, as I know you feel is very important in these efforts. So it'll be done with our One Arroyo partners, Royal Foothills Mountains Conservancy, One Arroyo, Arroyo Seco Foundation, and various others in conjunction with Parks and Public Works. And it was supported by Councilmember Hampton. I know that he is absent right now.
I don't think that's primarily in his district, but I absolutely would love to see and have long advocated for a better approach than cement in the lower Arroyo.
Mm-hmm.
But I am skeptical about always doing plans and having, we've just been through this with our specific plans. We had to jump up and down, even though we set as one of our 5 priorities the implementation of placemaking in our specific plans. To get attention to actually funding those, the council had to express some fairly high level of frustration. And we have a planning commission and we have a Parks and Recreation Commission. Mm-hmm. And so I think they ought to be spearheading this and not just community stakeholders.
This would be brought in front of them, I imagine, once we move forward with it. But the idea was.
Well,
for-
let's not move forward with it until we've involved the Planning Commission, the Parks and Recreation Commission. Let's do this right from the beginning.
Well, I think, we've seen a lot of success in attracting grants because we, in fact, take this approach. Funding agencies, governmental or otherwise, are loath to consider giving money to an agency when there is no plan. And so what we've done in the past that has been very successful both with Public Works, in the Arroyo, and other departments is we prepare ourselves. We have oftentimes a shovel-ready plan that moves us quickly up the list when funding agencies are making decisions. We're not going to a funding agency saying, give us X amount of dollars and then we're going to run off and tell you what we're going to do. We take a much more surgical and deliberate approach by creating a plan that has support in the community and then putting it before the funding agency and saying, don't you want to be a part of this and make this happen? And we've seen a lot of success. And so I actually, Mr. Cole, support the approach for that reason, because it's proven to be successul.
Well, again, my point, go ahead.
And often, thank you, and often people, in the community come to us and say, why are you going after these dollars without having first talked to us about a plan, what you were going to do? And so it also is very effective in gaining community input in advance, gaining community support, so that when we go before a funding agency, we're all on the same page and we have a product that they can fund that has been through the community process and, again, is shovel-ready.
I don't think we're disagreeing, Mayor, as usual. Sometimes we have a different emphasis, but this is titled the Lower Arroyo Park Planning and Feasibility Study, and it's very general terms, and it doesn't mention actually building upon the previous plans. We've done a lot, as you know, we've done a lot of previous plans for the Lower Arroyo going back 30 years. And so if this is really going to produce and have a process likely to build community support, I support it. I want to see dollars spent in the Lower Arroyo. I want to see a more natural approach than the cement that the Army Corps of Engineers left us almost 100 years ago.
Without flooding the Arroyo. That's the challenge, as you know.
Yes.
Yeah. I agree with you.
And so I just want to make sure, and we're going to take this up again tonight. We're doing an environmental justice element of the general plan, and we have a restorative justice recommendation coming from the 710 Reconnecting Pasadena. Do they connect, or are we duplicating efforts where we end up with lots of great plans and lack of follow through? So that's going to be my focus, is making sure. I'm not against planning. I'm against planning for the sake of planning. I want to see what you're striving toward, which is the planning creates consensus,
Right.
creates actionable projects, has the support of the organizations like our Planning Commission, our Parks and Recreation Commission, who are charged with doing this planning, so that we can. And Ms. Peschauer is a whiz at getting grants. I'm impressed and supportive of that. But I want to make sure that we actually are doing
Sure.
planning that's going to lead to the outcomes you're suggesting.
No, and I think that's absolutely the goal, and particularly in the Arroyo, I mean, the specific plans, for the most part, are 100% our jurisdiction, the city, both from planning perspective, but as well as physical jurisdiction, legal jurisdiction. In the Arroyo, you have multiple jurisdictional issues, Army Corps of Engineers, the flood control, the city, I mean, you name it. And so it's particularly important that we conduct a feasibility study because we're not the only ones who have a hand in a say, and that we gain support for a plan, not just internally within the department, externally among residents, but also jurisdictionally among the various agencies. So I support this. Mr. Masuda?
Thank you, Mayor, and I agree with you about the city and our staff being successful, and they're able to go after more grant money, so keep doing that.
I'll do my best.
Okay, my question is on number one, resurfacing, the citywide resurfacing ADA improvement program, and it's $2.264 million. That seems like a lot of money, and it sounds like, and it's well spent. Is that figure going up, or is that kind of like where it's been?
This is a collection of essentially rollover money from prior projects that are complete or shelved. So we scrounged up everything we could for the council priority of street paving. It puts us where we've been for the last 3 years, right around $11 million in total. This is just our scraping all the old projects to see where we can find some more dollars. We did find some before, we found some more since you were updated last, and that's what this is. This is not something we're gonna find every year. We dug deep to find everything.
Okay. Good job. Thank you for that. That's my question. Thanks for your answer.
So I'm prepared to move the staff recommendations for item 1 through 5. I would like to attach an amendment if I have support, that both the Planning Commission and the Park and Recreation Commission get a timely report before we embark on this to help scope and ensure that we're creating a plan that is not duplicative, but a plan that will build upon our previous plans.
Yeah, no, I don't know that, I think the correct approach is maybe to have staff give some thought to that and then, and design the scope and then go to Planning Commission for feedback rather than in advance having Planning Commission do that work. I think that might be more efficient and effective.
Yeah, and we did go to Planning Commission for this prior, and it was,
Oh,
Phyllis reminded me, I apologize. And they did accept this into the revised CIP, but as we noted, it is only $500,000. So the idea of this was much towards what Mayor Gordo mentioned, was to get together with our Arroyo partners and Park and Recs and look at the 5 criteria and to try to find a bench of projects that at some point could be moved forward into a
Yeah.
project. So it'll be several projects that are identified. There will be the internal stakeholder, and then we will go out to the the community in a broader outreach so that there can be some input there. And then once we have the bench of projects that might oversee and be helpful in the Arroyo area, that's what would be delivered to this. Not actual projects, but
Okay.
just project concept
Yeah.
ideas.
so I don't think we need the amendment, Mr. Cole. I think we just,
I disagree, but I may not have majority support. I have been a planning commissioner. The process is that we go and we find whether this new project is congruent with the general plan, is compliant. That is different from making sure that this plan is not duplicative, but actually builds upon previous plans. And I think there's some value in having that up front rather than have the staff go off and do this and present a fait accompli. I think I want to see serious change in the Arroyo, and my heartburn with the way we've done planning in so many other areas is that we are great at making plans, but not necessarily at integrating them and leading to, now, you have a different perspective, I respect that perspective, and you're not wrong. But I think I'm not wrong in saying that we have a lot of plans that have sat on the shelf, including those for the Lower Arroyo.
yeah, again, I think the staff recommendation is fine. I think your comments are good comments for staff to keep in mind and to address as we move forward. But I think for this matter, let's get it going because we don't want to miss funding streams. Hopefully there's a change in administration and, well, there will be a change in administration, but, you know, in the political climate in DC, and we'll start to see more dollars coming in, and I want us to be well-positioned, particularly for the Arroyo. So I'm prepared to support the staff recommendation. So, Mr. Cole, did you want to make your motion, or do you want Mr. Masuda to make a motion for this?
Mr. Masuda can make the motion.
My motion would be to support the staff's recommendation.
Thank you. And I'll second that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll abstain.
Okay, Mr.
Not
Cole.
because I don't support.
No, understood. I think you made comments, and I think they have merit, and I think they should certainly guide the staff, so thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so next we go to item 3. Am I right about that? Yes. This is the amendment to the fiscal year 2026 operating budget.
And Mayor, would you like a presentation on this?
I think the materials are sufficient, but if look to my colleagues.
I have some questions, but no, I don't think we
Okay.
need a presentation. Many of them are very straightforward.
Sure. Mr. Cole?
So, I suspect some people may wonder what I had for breakfast this morning, but I again have this concern, and it goes, Mr. City Manager, to, you know, to the internal process. We are tapping the unappropriated general fund balance for several of these. We're tapping into the low and moderate income housing fund and the inclusionary housing fund for 2 of these. And some of them are, again, are quite straightforward. But, you know, for example, the police department finds after, you know, we're in inflationary time, finds after the budget is adopted that they need another $500,000 to keep up with their vehicle replacement and upfitting. And our housing department finds that they need an extra $175,000 or $185,000 for administration. And these are real things. I've been a city manager. I know that sometimes you can't, in a $300 and some million budget, you can't always hit the mark exactly. But here we're using our discretionary funds, the funds that we say we're out of, we're broke, we have no money for this and this and this. But we need $500,000 for police vehicles? Oh, absolutely, we have enough money for that. We need $185,000 for more administration in the housing department? Absolutely, we need that. What kind of assurance can you give us that we're asking hard questions before we take these dollars that are so precious and so needed for other priorities, whether it's street paving, whether it's a year-round homeless shelter, whether it's public safety staffing, that, you know, if we have $685,000 that we've asked a hard question, do you really need this? Can you squeeze this out of your existing budget? Can we downsize or postpone this because we have other priorities in the city rather than making everybody whole for what they think they need?
Mayor? You want?
Go ahead.
I appreciate the question. Obviously, being new, I certainly push back on these questions as well. The item certainly was asked about. I will give credit to Mr. DeVink on working on his fleet department and identifying shortfalls in what they were assuming vehicle replacement costs would be. And so some of these costs came from that. And he's been working year-round to make sure that his future replacement costs keeps up with inflation and those additional costs, as well as making sure the police department makes sure they have sufficient funds in the future for outfitting. So we are hoping this is an anomaly. I certainly pushed back. I held this item for 2 weeks, asking those exact questions to make sure I understood what our processes were and that I can be a tool to those departments in order for them to have the right budget items. Item 7 was a new item I asked the budget team to look for as we were coming to year end. And per our policies, we have to ask for appropriations. They may have asked for some contracts along the way, but they had the funds available in fund balance. And so I have a new policy with my team to make sure we're monitoring those on a more regular quarterly basis. And so these were a couple new changes that I had asked for during this budget cycle.
Well, that's enormously responsive. Look, I'm inclined to give our staff, who do a terrific job day in and day out, the benefit of the doubt. But I want to be sure that the message is clear from the city council to the administration and through the administration to the department heads, that the council is not satisfied with the status quo because we no longer can accommodate new needs through new revenue. We only can accommodate new needs through better spending our existing revenue, unless, as we get to the bottom line of our agenda today, additional revenue. But in most cases, additional revenue requires the citizens to vote on it, and that is a challenging thing to get in these times. So I appreciate that you were doing that. I take you at your word, and as long as it's clear that we're going to not accept these, if we rubber stamp them, I want to know that someone else has given them real consideration. Because again, these are discretionary dollars that could be used for anything. And we, not in the case of the Housing Trust Fund, but those could go toward actual programs to house people rather than for administration. So if those questions are getting asked and you're satisfied with the answers, I'm satisfied that you're doing that role on behalf of the council.
Yeah, see, Mr. Cole, the only thing, I wouldn't say we're rubber stamping. We're doing our, we have oversight responsibility, and that's what you just exercised, oversight responsibility. If we weren't asking these questions, and thank you for asking them, then we wouldn't have the answer. Then it is a rubber stamp.
Yes.
And
That's what I was
so,
saying, is
yeah.
rather than doing that, I want to be
Yeah.
sure that we've done our due diligence in making sure that the staff
Well,
has done theirs.
And so I'm satisfied with the answer. I think it was a very direct answer, very direct, concise, and tells me that the work on oversight from Finance Department and the work by Mr. DeVink and his department in ensuring that costs are accounted for in advance is absolutely the appropriate approach. We love our police department, our police officers, but they're not the experts on automobiles or finance. And so to have the understanding that the other departments are providing a level of oversight that then the council can query about is a very good thing. So thank you to all involved. Is there a motion? Did we? Motion to approve? Okay. Moved and seconded. Without opposition, that matter is approved. Thank you to the police department, public works, and all the departments involved. Finance. Okay, next, we'll move on to item 4, the quarterly investment report. Oh, there's Vic. I didn't see you, Vic. You're hiding.
Thank you. Good afternoon,
Mr. Gainey.
Mayor Gordo, council members. This quarterly investment report is for the quarter ending March 31st. It's for the first quarter of 2006. According to state code, we have to present or render the report within all the information to the legislative body. And in addition to that, to be full disclosure, we make a presentation publicly as well. I'd like to start making a comment saying that not only I'm going to talk about the quarter, but all the way through today, what's going on in the economy. And because the Iranian conflict, actually, which is within the 4th month, today wreaked havoc on the market. And not only on our market, on the global economy. Now, it eroded consumer confidence. The most recent consumer confidence number came out, the index at 48.6, which is way below 50. That means within the last 3 years, this was the lowest consumer confidence index we had in the US. It accelerated inflation, and we'll talk about that, about the inflation. And if prolonged, hopefully not, hopefully they'll stop and we come to some kind of a resolution. Because if it's prolonged, it increases the probability of causing more damage to the US economy and the global economy. Now, despite all these conditions, the American consumer has been pretty resilient. During the first quarter, initially, the government released the GDP number at 2.1% and then downgraded it to 1.6%. The second quarter is being predicted by most economists for the GDP to be around 2.1%, anywhere from 1.9 to 2.3%, on average at 2.1%. But one thing is, everybody agrees 100% that the US consumer cannot withstand a prolonged high energy prices. It's chipping away from everybody's disposable income. Not just everybody. I can feel that when you go to the gas station, when you go to the grocery store, and we'll touch about the inflation numbers, about those things. And the Fed came out recently, made a statement that, they think this is more temporary issue, and hopefully things will cool down and things go back to normal. Talking about inflation, the most recent PCE index, which is what the Fed really tracks, the personal consumption expenditure as an inflation gauge, they're targeted at 2%. The 12-month trailing PCE index was 3.8%, and they're predicting in May to be about 4.1%. So clearly, inflation numbers are going up. This graph indicates also the producer's price index was just skyrocketed, more recently last month. So clearly on the inflation front, that needs to be somehow to be contained, and it all depends on mainly energy prices. Now, inflation is an index that the Labor Bureau of Statistics, tracks. It's a basket of goods and some services. And they put weight, it has 5 categories. In each category, they put a weight on it. The largest weight has the housing and shelter, which they look at rent, owner's equivalent rent, household furnishings, these type of things. Then there's food and beverage, which is one of the most volatile components of the index, along with gas and energy. Those are the 2 most volatile indexes. And then there's a category of medical care, recreation, education, apparel, and other goods. So when we talk about inflation being 3.6 or 4.3, it's a weighted index of all these items that they measure. Just to give you the more detailed information, energy prices over the last 12 months increased almost 20%. And food prices increased about 9 to 10%, depending on which statistics given out. So for us, what's more dear to our heart is when we go to the grocery store, we see prices going up. We feel it immediately. We go to the gas station, we fill in gas. We feel it immediately. We don't feel, the modest increase in technology or transportation or some, other goods or apparels. You don't feel that immediately because we're engaged in the daily activities of gas and food. We feel that a lot. And those are the 2 items that have increased the most in the CPI index. So again, I gave you more updated information. And last quarterly investment report, I think the mayor requested information about the LA Long Beach Anaheim CPI index, and this is a graph for all items that has gone up about on average 12 months, 3.6%. But with that 3.6%, if you exclude, if you look only for gas and food, those two items are going to be a lot more than just the average 3.6%. And this represents, that information. As you can see, the all items have jumped, and all items less food and energy has dropped. Actually, it is that gap. It's the energy prices and food that's creating that increase in the index. Unemployment has been about 4.3% as of today. Surprisingly, the employment market is holding pretty good. The most recent statistics came out that the economy added a lot more than what most economists have predicted, mainly in the healthcare industry, adding a lot more jobs. Unemployment rate, just to give you an example, the U.S. national rate is about 4.3%. State of California is 5.3%. LA County is 5.2%, and Pasadena is about 4.7%. Typically, in the larger metropolitan cities, unemployment is much higher than the national averages. Fed fund rates, there's been a most recent meeting. Nothing happened, no rate increase, no rate decrease. The market today, if you had asked me about 6 months ago, the market was predicting that the Fed will cut rates twice in 2026. Now the market is predicting a rate increase by the end of 2026. A rate increase is not good. All rates will increase. Interest on car loans, mortgages, credit cards, everything's going to go up. So that adds up to more, chipping away from the consumer, disposable income. This is what the implied overnight rates. This predicts that, the rates are going to go up. What investors are betting where it is today and what's going to be a year from now, and it's 25 basis points higher. Another indication of rates of a year ago. The green line is today's yield curve. As you can see, all the rates starting from the terms 2 years to 30 years have gone up, and it's predicting to go even higher than what they were before. Well, it's a two-edged sword. When interest rates go up, bonds have an inverse relationship with interest rates. As interest rates go up, the value of bonds drop. But yet, it gives the opportunity for every incremental investment that we make, to increase the earnings rate on our portfolio. Stock market is just going, it had its corrections and volatility because of the war, but then came back. As of today, the Dow's up 7.5%, S&P is up 9%, Nasdaq's about 12.5%. As of March 31st, the city had a total of about $1.15 billion under investments, the majority of the funds being in the pooled portfolio, and another good chunk being in investments held with fiscal agents, and mainly that's contributed to the GEO bonds that we issued, and those are the proceeds of the GEO bonds that are held with the third-party trustees, and we invest those funds. This is a distribution of how we're allocated within the fixed income market. So we have about 44.5% in Fed agencies. We have about corporate bonds, about 19%. And as I recall, Councilman Cole raised last time a question about corporate bonds, and mainly the ones that we invest in the banking sector. And what if we have another banking crisis? And I will address those. And because the mayor asked for me to come back and give a summary of what type of regulations were enacted to mitigate, those risks. Pretty much we are a very high quality portfolio, anywhere from AAA. We can, if we rate our portfolio, it could be rated as a AAA portfolio, basically. This is our liquidity. It shows we have a pretty strong liquidity, our distribution and as far as maturities. On the corporate credit quality, we always disclose what names we own in the corporate sector. Anywhere from Apple, Johnson & Johnson, Princeton University, New York Life, Wells Fargo Bank, Credit Suisse, JP Morgan, MetLife, Eli Lilly, Merck, RBC, BofA, Toyota, Mutual of Omaha, Cisco System, Amazon, Goldman Sachs, Bristol Myers, and US Bancorp. And we don't hold anything that are engaged, any companies in weapons manufacturing or oil or type of, restrictions that we codified it in our investment policy. We also own taxable municipal bonds to the extent that we can get those. It's very hard to get. But those are the names that we hold. As a compliance, we're in full compliance with our investment policy and the state government code, and we state that based on the limits by the code, our credit quality, and the maturities. And our portfolio yield continue to grow. We're at a point where we're above a 4% earnings rate today. About 2.5 years ago, we were about 1.6%. So every 0.1% we increase our portfolio earnings rate equates to about $1 million additional interest earnings. So today we're earning almost $25 million more in interest income than about 2.5 years ago. I'd say in conclusion, all investments are in compliance. We have ample liquidity to maintain, to meet our budget expenditures, and we have a statement that we have to make. And our returns are excellent compared to our portfolio risk. And I'd like to address now the new regulations subsequent to the banking crisis in 2008. Basically, it's summarized it in 5 bullet points. The regulators dramatically increased the capital buffers. They mandated banks to maintain higher equity, common equity, and on their balance sheet, significantly more and higher quality capital to absorb any losses if they have, insolvency or risky loans. Also, the liquidity, they mandate a new liquidity, as protections. Banks now had to maintain a large stockpile of cash and easily sellable high-quality assets to survive any sudden 30-day funding freeze or cash crunch. That's another regulation that was imposed on banks. They banned proprietary trading, the Volcker rule, what they call it. Banks now are strictly prohibited from using depositors' insured money to engage in risky investments. What happened in 2008, they were investing in what's called CMOs, collateral mortgage obligations, or CDOs, collateral deposit, obligations, and those were pretty risky. Basically forcing banks to go to their core business, meaning getting deposits, paying a very minimum amount on your deposits, and lending that money as loans, and locking in the spread between what they pay and what they give out as loans, or invested in U.S. Treasuries if the spread is fine. So they eliminated pretty much that risk on their investment side of losing money. The regulations also mandates banks to do a mandatory annual stress test. And the stress test is that it's an analysis to show and demonstrate to the regulators that under extreme economic conditions and disasters, such as spiking unemployment or housing market collapses, they can sustain the business without going out of business. You have heard probably the too big to fail banks, the term that came out. Um, the banks are nowadays, the larger banks mainly are required to submit detailed pre-planned blueprints mapping how they're going to deal and dismantle their assets in case of any bankruptcy without any taxpayers' bailout. So all these measures that were imposed kind of gave us a better comfort along with the rating agencies, that the rating agencies, not only they're rating the banks on the financial side, but also are engaged in themselves in going through these analyses just to give a rating to a bank. So we feel pretty safe with the names we hold. Basically, they're too big to fail banks, what we hold. Now, this does not mean that regional banks or smaller banks can have problems. We've seen one bank in Northern California, I think, several years ago, that had a lot of difficulties. They had what's called a run to the bank. When the rumors come out that the bank's something's gonna happen, everybody runs. They want their money out, and the banks cannot. It's impossible to satisfy all the depositors at one time. And what happened is even though their balance sheet was pretty strong, but then what happened is that the interest rates have gone up so much that all the investments they held were underwater. They had unrealized losses. He started selling a lot of the investment at loss just to provide the cash to the depositors. So that's what happened. But that bank, regional banks, are not subject to the same regulations as the larger banks. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Questions, comments? Very thorough report. Thank you, Mr. Gainian. Mr. Cole?
Can you go back to the page that lists the names of the corporate
Yes.
holdings we have there? So, Vic, thank you as always for really a thoughtful, comprehensive, and extraordinarily well-informed report. If we were looking at this 20 years ago, Lehman Brothers would not have stuck out. Washington Mutual would not have stuck out. That they would be just as blue chip as the names that are on here today. And you've given an excellent rendition of the reforms that protect these companies, which are the too big to fail banks, given the ones that are on the finance side. You didn't address, though, one thing that I've read a lot about recently, which is the vulnerability of the banks to private lending. They don't do private lending. They are prohibited from making the kind of risky investments that has allowed this mushrooming of the private lending market. But in many cases, they are also lending to the private lenders the cash. And so what's your thought about the secondary vulnerability of these big banks to a bubble in the private lending business? Because all of the protections you've just listed for these big banks don't apply to that. In fact, they exist to make the loans that are much riskier.
Part of the buffing up their equity and their reserves is if they do a private lending and the creditor fails, in one sense, that provides that security to mitigate that risk. So whether they're lending it to a corporation, or they're lending it to a small consumer, or whether they're lending in the private sector, the security kind of works the same way. There might be some higher risks in the private lending sector, but I haven't heard so far a ballooning, concern about that at this point yet.
What I read is that big banks have a $300 billion exposure to private lending.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that if
Cumulative, yeah.
if that goes south, then they have to utilize all those buffers. It's something, I think, to watch.
We constantly watch, and if we hear any rumors or any things that that gives us the discomfort level, we automatically, get out of the position, we liquidate. The other factor of our job is, I just want to emphasize, in general though, we manage investments or we manage risk. And we try not to avoid risk, but just to manage the risk. So far it has worked out pretty good, even through all that turmoil, but anything could happen. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Masuda?
Vic, thank you so much for the report. I know there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's very detailed. And you're right, the consumers, what we're looking at, we realize the cost of food and gas. I mean, when I go gas up, I look at the amount that's on the, on the meter there, I think, wow, it's amazing how gas has gone up. So is that what affects our confidence? When you say consumer confidence? Is there just a
Mostly
number that-
because a lot of people, I would say, if you own your house, if you have a mortgage, housing pricing or others they're not going to impact you as much.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have kids in private schools or in universities, education index is not going to matter to you.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that's going to matter, which is really on a daily basis, it impacts, is the two volatile components, which are the food and gas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a subject for around everybody's kitchen table lately, everywhere I go, because it's real.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about, like I said, inflation, it's up 4%, 4.3%, say, it's not that much.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, because what we're spending it's costing us about 20% more or 10% more, because the rest of the components we're not much interested in, because 90% of the people use most of their disposable income, a lot of money, on food and gas. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Thank you. Thank you for your report, and thank you for talking about that. I know the mayor talks about filling his boat up. Talking about a big shock probably every time.
Yeah, it is. Or the car, or the lawnmower.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, I think we're all seeing tremendous increases. And I think it's important for people to also understand that, the level of increases that they see in their home is also the level of increases, if not more, than that we see here at City Hall, because we rely so much on fuel, on personnel. People have asked me, do we have a revenue issue when we balanced the budget last week? Our revenues have continued to go up, but it's the cost of providing services and purchasing goods that's really outpaced our revenue increases. That's the problem, and I think most people can and do relate to that problem, and we're seeing the same thing at City Hall.
You're absolutely right. If I may add also that if inflation doesn't subside, if energy prices continue to go up for one reason or another, if the geopolitical issues are not resolved, the example is people are going to be spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars extra on food and gas. So instead of spending that money to go out to a restaurant or spending that money to buy goods, and ultimately local governments are going to get impacted because our sales tax revenues are going to start seeing the real impact over time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, with that, Mr. Masuda moves. Second this is a receive and file.
Yes.
Yeah, so, seconded by Mr. Hampton to receive and file. Unanimously received and filed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, we will move to revenue opportunities, and this is item 5.
Thank you, Mayor. Karen Schneider, Finance Director. I'm going to go over a PowerPoint you saw our city manager present a few weeks ago, and it was directed to come back to the Finance Committee. And so we'll go at a pace that will be appropriate for the committee for discussions if you'd like to pause or go through the whole presentation. We'll start with tax options that we have available to us. We'll go over the use tax, also a portion of our sales tax, our parcel tax option, benefit districts, a business tax option, retail vacancy tax, real property tax transfer, and the parking tax. So first we'll go over doing an additional measure, can either be a general or a special tax. We have a 0.25% left in our use tax. It's a portion of sales tax. What makes it different than the general sales tax is these are goods that are either bought and sold within the city or items like cars or vehicles that this is their permanent place they are deposited. So it has a point of sale component to it. Currently, that 0.25% is estimated to be about 11 million annually. And we are considering the county measure that just passed, as well as AB 1768, which we believe will allow us still to have the capacity to pursue that 0.25%. We have a parcel tax. This is a special tax, meaning it will require a 2/3 vote. In that, we can look for items such as your council priorities of fire or streets. This can be any amount we go forward with a study for, currently estimated at $20 million. These are parcel tap uses or development square footages as ways to calculate that particular tax. A benefit assessment district is similar in the special tax. It can come out to be a special use, such as fire specific. A district can be all or part of the city and can also require a study. So what that means is there's got to be an analysis to who's receiving that benefit to that particular district. In a fire district, for example, they're receiving additional fire services that can go towards providing additional fire stations and or weed abatements. There's some examples. Business tax is a shift in business models. So currently we would be going to a gross receipts rather than the employee count. This is a pretty growing trend that we're seeing across the state. We have some indicators that there could be as many as 50 cities this November pursuing this model, as well as we know of another 30 that might be pursuing it in 2028. This has a range that can be as small as 1 million to as high as 20 million. Depends on how it's structured and if we place any caps that might be for special businesses we want to consider. The retail vacancy tax is currently being discussed by the EdTech as potential opportunities. Ideally, we would focus on long-term and vacant properties. San Francisco and Oakland currently have this. The state did consider one as well. And there is some legality behind the San Francisco tax that's currently being discussed that could influence how this tax goes forward. Cities also have retail vacancy penalties. They're similar to a tax in that they do higher code enforcement and can create repeat penalties on top of a vacancy if they're finding repeated code enforcement. That's a more common one than the tax that's in San Francisco and Oakland. Real property tax transfer is like a special tax, but it can be a general tax for voting purposes. It's a transfer tax. Currently, the county has 0.11% or 0.11%. It has interesting challenges that are currently going on. Currently, there's a ballot measure that's on there to prohibit these from going forward. And then your city manager found today that we've had a gut and revise occurring at the state that could create a cap of 1.5% cumulative combined all taxes. So between the county and the city, there would be a cap that would go into effect January 1st, 2027. If that bill moves forward, It's a state's response to counter the ballot measure that's currently on there to ban all caps on transfer tax. Our city of Los Angeles is the most infamous for this, and what they have is the excess tax of 4% on large retail. Yeah, 4% plus the counties. And then we have parking tax. This is similar to a TOT. Burbank is our neighbor that has this. They have both a 12% on TOT as well as in the Burbank airport for parking spaces there. It would apply to all paid parking and does limit over time because it's capped at a percentage of what the number of spaces you have available to you.
I'm sorry, what does that mean?
So if we don't have any increases in the number of parking spaces, it's not going to grow like some other taxes like would grow by CPI. Because
Well-
parking spaces don't typically grow at that same rate.
But it's a percentage tax, so as people raise the amount of money they charge for parking, it would go up.
Yes, that's true, but it's more limited in comparison to some of our other revenue sources. I'll go over really quickly again what those dollar values were. So I'm going to go back a couple slides. So use tax, approximately 11 million. A parcel tax can be 20 million. A benefit district also up to 20 million, if that's our current estimate. Business tax is current estimated from our property tax and sales tax auditors at 20 million. Could be higher. I find they tend to be understated in some of these, so it could be higher than 20 million. Retail vacancy, 1 to 5 million is our estimate. Real property transfer tax, assuming about a 1%, could be 1 to 4 million, and a parking 1 to 5. Going over for considerations, we do have the November 2026 election, and we do need to have something in front of to the county in early August, meaning we would want to have direction to the council in July to have that ballot measure moving forward. Other considerations are fiscal emergencies can have a standalone election other than a standing election. So our next election opportunity would be November 2028 if we don't declare a fiscal emergency. And benefit districts can happen at various times because they are property related. On the local funding, we also have non-tax areas to consider. A payment in lieu of taxes, the city of Orange is an example of this. They did it with Chapman College through a negotiated DA and bring in, I believe, between $5 and $10 million over the length of that DA. A development impact fee is also very common, and especially in lieu of the 710 might be an area to consider. Electric billboards along freeways and paid parking in the Arroyo came up through our budget subcommittee. So I mentioned the payment in lieu of the taxes. This is something that you would negotiate through a development agreement. And through these, you would determine what a business that is typically non or tax exempt, such as Caltech, you would be able to make a negotiation. That's just an example. It could be a hospital, it could be some other tax exempt development that's coming forward. Development impact fees require a study. Common one that would be useful for us to consider that we don't currently have is public safety. This can come in the form of facilities and equipment and technology. So as we're looking to expand and create additional fire stations, this would be a fee to consider. Electronic billboards along freeways, they average about 250,000 depending on what the contract you do along that. I know that's not currently something that Pasadena has or would want, but with the freeway, it is something to consider. And I've seen success for these in a couple of cities I've have exposure to. And then paid parking, as I mentioned, came out of the subcommittee. There's different ways we would suggest maybe considering this. One, we want to be aware of our partners that are already down there and have contracts with us, such as the Rose Bowl and Kids Space. We could offer residential permits, and this is one where we really look at the Rose Bowl area and the whole section as a regional park. And something similar you might have seen in San Marino, where they consider a residential and accounting component to their regional park there. currently that we're moving forward on, we had success in the court systems to get video streaming services concluded into our UUT. You just adopted new fire inspection and planning fees. We discussed off-street parking in the parking fund. We discussed during some of our meetings that there are areas in the parks such as program fields and use that we're having discussions on. You adopted a new merchant fee, which we think will be able to implement by December. And then the mandated cost recovery is also something we've heard from the council and we are currently working on. It's actually time for our 3-year cost allocation plan to be revisited, and we'll be looking at how we charge other funds. And I'm also working on planning and construction with the building department. Animal licensing has discussed increasing their fees. I've worked with Public Works, and that's probably the first one we're going to move forward on is new fees for the Public Works Department. And then Parks has also asked for a cost of service study that we'll probably do mid-year of 2027. So those are the ones that we already are going to be putting RFPs out in the 26-27 budget year. And that concludes the report, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Masuda.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the report. What stopped me is when the paid parking in the Arroyo. So was it something that people felt strongly about, or are they cautious about?
I'd say that it's polarizing, for one.
Okay.
But I will share that there is certainly a feeling that there is a regional draw to the Arroyo, whether it be the loop or the trails or whatever it might be, and that the city of Pasadena bears the burden of supporting this regional draw. And so if there's a way to charge through parking for the regional users, that would be something worth visiting. But because the Arroyo has a number of different entrance points, it has neighborhoods surrounding the Arroyo, it's certainly not impossible, but it presents a lot more challenges than a typical park that has a parking lot and an entrance, and so you decide whether or not you want to charge for parking or not. So that's the challenge. Sorry, there's an ad. That's the challenge. But I certainly we have heard from some residents the frustration that this should be our Arroyo, and a lot of people that don't live here come and use it a lot.
And the city has to maintain it. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, it really is a regional asset, and I do believe that the county has a role to play in terms of maintenance of the Arroyo. But notwithstanding the complexities that the city manager highlights, in San Marino, it's made to work. And it's made to work in large part at Lacey Park because there are parking restrictions that are imposed all around Lacey Park, which then make the feasibility of charging for parking for a non-resident possible. And, you know, that one has always bothered me, that, you know, we have to maintain, we have to patrol, we have to be responsible for the infrastructure, all of those things. And I love to see people in Pasadena, particularly engaged in healthy family sports activity, and you name it. But I do think it's something that is worth looking at, because we've got to have some funding streams to better maintain the Arroyo and to invest, particularly as we move into the Olympics preparations. So I'm not prepared to let go of that one at this point. I would suggest that maybe we take the temperature of some of the surrounding neighborhoods in the spirit of our earlier conversation with Mr. Cole related to another matter. Start talking to some of the surrounding neighborhoods and members of the council who represent those surrounding neighborhoods to see, what their appetite might be for parking restrictions immediately abutting the arroyo that might make the parking tax or cost recovery more feasible. Now, I'm not suggesting that we impose that on residents. I think residents pay their share already for maintenance of the arroyo through their taxes. We're talking about recovering costs from people who don't pay their share but enjoy our beautiful arroyo, and we want them to. We just want to make sure it continues to be a beautiful arroyo that they and our residents can enjoy. Mr. Hampton?
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate you teeing that off because I agree. I've been on the council for some time now, and I've always thought that we should charge something for using the arroyo. It is a jewel in the San Gabriel Valley, but not just here, but across the whole entire state. A lot of folks use the arroyo, and I do think that, as you mentioned, not charging our residents, trying to figure out a way to balance that and maybe some sort of residence pass. I don't know how that would work for residents that live in Pasadena to be able to utilize the arroyo since they're already paying. And then, as you mentioned, Lacey Park is a great example because throughout that whole entire neighborhood, you can't park on the street unless you live there. And so having a district around, from Lincoln to wherever, to the west side as well, where it makes it less advantageous to park in the neighborhood, in protecting the neighborhood from folks just parking in the neighborhood and actually increasing the parking patrol in those areas as well that we talked about last week as well. Right? So I do think that this is a opportunity for the city to invest more into the arroyo and also collect some revenue from all those that are utilizing our space there. So I'd love to hear more. I also think that if we do a residential only parking area, this could be beneficial to the events that we have at the Rose Bowl and maybe even lessen. I'm sure the neighbors will want still their neighborhood protections, but maybe there is a way to decrease the neighborhood protections that we put up in a way where we enforce people that are parking in the neighborhood from the RBOC, and maybe that some of those dollars come back to the city for events that they're happening at the Rose Bowl. If we're able to reduce those fees. As far as tax goes and sales tax, you had mentioned the sales tax. I think the county has a sales tax up right now, right? And what's the max amount that we can hit the sales tax at?
There's a 0.25% left.
And that's what the county's asking for?
No, the governor on June 1st signed that assembly bill. So the county's tax measure ER received an override. So that maintained our ability to potentially have the other 0.25%.
And where would that align us with the rest of the sales tax in our region?
We're already at the upper end. There's a few cities that have already grabbed that 0.25%. So if we grabbed it, we'd be equal with the highest cities, but it wouldn't put us out. We wouldn't be alone.
Okay.
But, we wouldn't be alone, but we'd be at the limit. Statewide, it stands out that a lot of cities in LA County are at the top statewide. But in the county, we largely fit in.
Okay, I wouldn't be opposed to increasing or having that looked at seriously for a November ballot, especially given the fact that the county's tax did pretty well. And so, especially if it could help our city as a whole for the different things that, last week we balanced our budget with, was it $46,000 left or 47 and some change? I forget what you said, Karen. That's tight. Not most, but some people have credit cards with limits right? That's greater than that. So we've got to look at ways to enhance our services in the city, and also how can the services that we do have, how can we be more streamlined with them? And we don't have a lot of funds to be able to do that with. And so I'm typically opposed to taxes. But in this case, I don't want the county or anyone else to take that 0.25% that we desperately need, because when they take it, we don't get a 0.25% back. Then for, I think you had there was another one I was really interested in. Sorry, I thought I wrote it down. The retail vacancy. I don't know if there needs to be a tax, but maybe a penalty. I know that's going to come back to us at EdTech. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything about that here since we're going to be discussing it there. Arnold's like, brother. You making it hard over here. I'm always making it hard for the city attorney. Javon would tell you. But yeah, those are some ways to. Are there other ways to generate revenue without taxing our residents?
Councilmember Hampton, I would say that that's likely through fees and cost recovery. I think there's capacity in areas that are planning and public works where we're providing services to the public. We know we have a low cost recovery. We talked about this in the Parks Department when we were going through the budget. And so finding some that have the right appetite with the community and the council will be what we'll be looking at. I'm going to start with the ones I think the most appetite for. It gives them building and development permits, and then we'll work our way through some of the others.
And then the other one I was really keen on was the parking tax in general. We have a city where a lot of folks love to come, and we have to keep cars moving as well. So if we can increase streets, increase parking structures that we own, or even does that include private parking structures? Oh, then that's a
Every
we should
parking
definitely be
space,
looking
every
at that.
parking space in the city that collects a fee, in theory, a parking tax would apply to, unless
So-
the council specifically exempted a certain kind of paid parking.
including PCC.
Correct.
Oh, and Caltech, correct?
If
Any
they have paid
large
parking,
institute?
yeah.
Oh, then that's a no-brainer. We should definitely be. We should because we have residents that would like to see more fast-build projects happen in their neighborhood, right? And these are all cars that are coming into our city, utilizing our park. So I would love to explore that a little bit more. And I don't know if that is something that you think could potentially be primed for a November ballot. What is our deadline?
The first Monday in August would be the last council meeting that the council could do something. That one's currently scheduled not to occur. So if the council didn't want to put any of the other meetings back on the calendar, then I think July 20th is the last scheduled meeting the council has. Well, I believe it has to be a regular meeting,
okay.
but so we'd have to put one of the canceled meetings back.
So we
I
couldn't
believe.
have a special meeting, we'd just have to put one of the canceled meetings back on calendar.
I believe that's accurate.
Okay.
That one seems like it might be low-hanging fruit. I don't know if we're going to get a lot of opposition to that. I'm sure there's going to be opposition to taxes in general, as there should be, especially we're talking about inflation and just the last conversation. But there are a lot of cars that are coming into Pasadena. As you know, we're a commuter city. Only is it 20% of our residents actually work in Pasadena. The rest are commuting out, and they're probably getting taxed on parking. And then we have folks coming in to our city as well for a myriad of reasons. Definitely, it seems like a no-brainer to me, but I'd be in favor of that. I know that Councilmember Cole's in the queue, so I'm done with my comments. I appreciate the presentation.
I think before I turn to Mr. Cole, if we were to dedicate a significant portion of a parking tax, for example, to roads and sidewalks, so that there's a benefit not just for residents, but for visitors to Pasadena. I think we can make a very strong and compelling point that it's the right thing to do. We aren't like other cities who, San Marino, for example, beautiful streets, but they don't have the use that we take, in large part because there isn't, the business district and commerce that we have. And so we intentionally invite people into Pasadena to shop, play, work, and they come and they bring their cars. And, that has an impact on all of our roads. And employers should understand that as well. So, and then there's, the parking companies. I mean, it's real revenue to parking companies, and they too should be, as part of the tax, agree that, they're able to have a thriving business in large part because our city is thriving and we're inviting people, but there's a cost associated with the maintenance of those roads. So I'd be interested in understanding what the appropriate allocation of such a tax might be, how much it would generate, how much we would appropriate directly to streets, sidewalks, and then take it from there. Mr. Cole?
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm on exactly the same page as you and Councilmember Hampton. I'm very skittish about any of the other taxes being ready for November for two reasons. One, we have almost no time to vet this with the public and/or interested stakeholders if it's a more narrow tax. And secondly, we don't even have more than a couple of meetings between now and the deadline, right? I mean, we've canceled a bunch of meetings between now and August 7th. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. After this Monday, I believe the next two meetings are canceled, and then we have two meetings, and then we're dark again.
Yeah, so there's not a whole lot of elbow room. I agree with Councilmember Hampton, who described it as low-hanging fruit, and I agree with you, Mayor, that it would be much more palatable if we addressed it to the need for road maintenance. It's a direct tie-in, right? All of those cars that park have had to use our roads, every single one of them. So I think that's one thing that we could actually get on the ballot in November and have a chance of passing. We would probably take the same approach that we took with the sales tax that we split with the school district, which is an A-B measure. A is a general tax on parking, and B is, if the general tax passes, would you be in favor of devoting some or all of it to street maintenance and sidewalks?
Would you support devoting?
Mm-hmm.
The council devoting. In other words,
which I think makes that direction, which we can't legally do without triggering the 2/3 vote, which I think is a much higher hill to climb. But I think it could signal that that's where we intend to put the money. I also would like to ask, I know that Los Angeles is different. Los Angeles has the same structure that you're recommending. This may be too complicated to move through on this round, but I think we also ought to consider taxing parking spaces that don't charge, because there's a huge resource of private parking spaces that are walled off, that, churches that only use them on Sunday, businesses that don't allow other businesses to share the parking, that don't have parking. And we have such a parking problem with residents, and it's going to increase as we build more structures with less parking. So actually incentivizing people to charge for parking so that they can open up some of those walled-off parking spaces. That may be too complicated a legal and political question to do in the first round, but I think that's a huge source of revenue, but even more than revenue, it would push, I mean, there's, in Southern California, there are 7 parking spaces for every single car. That's because we have a parking space in our garage, which we never use. There's a parking space at the Dodger Stadium for 87 times a year or 82 times a year, unless they go to the World Series. There's a parking spot at our church or our mosque or our synagogue. There's parking spaces at our businesses, which get used when people are working there, and then they're empty overnight when people and the residents need a place to park, maybe literally next door. And so there's liability reasons why people don't open up there, but there are people desperately looking for parking, and there's empty parking structures. So I would like to at least have a look at that. But as the bottom line, I appreciate the whole report. I think this is the most viable idea to get on the November ballot. I think that trying to figure out whether we could pass a sales tax in 4 weeks and 2 meetings, I think that's a lot. I agree with Mr. Hampton. I don't want it to go elsewhere, but I think it's a lot to try to jam through in a month. But I think the parking tax, it's only going to affect a small number of people, most of whom are not voters. And again, if we could fix our streets, that's a popular topic with most residents. Finally, because we have a limited amount of time, and it's not on tonight's agenda, is that correct? It's not on tonight's council agenda.
That's correct. This is not on tonight's council.
So the first time we could take it up is in 2 weeks with the council. So I would like to give direction, to the extent that that's possible, from the Finance Committee to seriously bring this forward to the next meeting. Because if we have to decide at 3 weeks from now to bring it forward, we literally have 1 week to get this squared away.
Yeah, I would, believe ideally we would want to poll the council to see if we could add one of the canceled meetings at the end of July or the beginning of August and put that back on the calendar.
That would be true for any November ballot issue, but again,
Correct.
I think that to wait to introduce this idea to the public to July 20th is our next meeting, and then the 27th.
July 13th is the next meeting. No, right, and what I'm saying is maybe give us 3 or 4 meetings to talk about it rather than only having 2 meetings to talk about
But
it.
I think we should definitely have it on the agenda on the 13th.
Agreed.
Okay.
And to Councilmember Cole's point about, parking lots that are walled off, I don't know if we could do that citywide, but at least in the SB 79 location, anywhere close to transit, could be advantageous for those properties that will be coming in eventually to develop. They don't have to build parking, but if we have some sort of tax incentive, it kind of opens the door to let those folks know whether they're churches, whether they're businesses, to open their lots for paid parking.
Yeah, no, I'm not opposed to attempting that. I think all good ideas. I would remind us that at one point, we tried the shared parking initiative in the business districts, particularly South Lake. And so that's one model to look at. Essentially, we dedicated spaces, as Mr. Cole points out, when businesses are closed. As we saw increases to residential, we encouraged shared parking agreements. I'm not sure how successful that effort was, but certainly it's one to consider or revisit to see what we learned from that at a minimum.
I'd like to make a motion that we ask staff, obviously, we're not the majority of the council, but we ask staff to bring, as you've said you could, Mr. Oxworth, the consideration for the full council on July 13th of a potential November parking issue again, with the intent of dedicating some or all of that revenue to street maintenance.
Is it parking only, or do you want us to bring back parking and use tax as two items?
I personally am really skittish about trying to jam through a sales tax in this limited amount of time. Obviously, we have between August and November for a campaign, but we'd be starting from scratch. Nobody's raised any money, nobody's put together any committee. We can't do that as a city. Somebody else would have to do that. And there's going to be a ton of measures on the ballot in November, some of them getting over $100 million worth of spending. So we'll have to compete with that to get people's attention to make the case for sales tax. And sales tax is the most unpopular and regressive tax. I agree again with Mr. Hampton that to leave that quarter cent for somebody else to grab is not a good idea. But it's an uphill battle, I think, because everybody pays sales tax, and we can't give our residents a pass on that. And most people, are not happy about paying more in a time of inflation. I don't mind it being considered if others feel strongly that it's a possibility. I mean, it certainly would be worth. I mean, if we want to talk about it, I just think the parking tax is a much more viable approach. It doesn't generate as much revenue, but I think it actually has a chance of passing in November, where sales tax is a much harder sell.
Yeah, I'm gravitating towards your view on this one, Mr. Cole. I think, given the economic presentation we received earlier today, given, the very real financial pain that people are feeling, going forward with a sales tax may even harm our possibility of success on a road tax. And so I'd want to be very careful about that. The road tax, our roads need it. I think there's a compelling argument. There's a direct nexus, and particularly if we create a direct nexus between the dollars and the work to be done, I think people will be much more accepting of that. Without having the benefit of time to explain to people why, there might be an increase in sales tax, we may be harming that effort. And so I'd look to the city manager for a response, but that's my concern.
The good news about a use tax or a sales tax is that the applicability and how it's done is pretty straightforward. So having that conversation is relatively straightforward. We don't have to do a lot of work. The parking tax and some of the things that have shared tonight, we've got some work to do over the next 2 weeks about saying, is there a way to charge all spaces in town? Is there a way to charge, paid and doing so? We'll have to bring back some more options and research on parking. The use tax is relatively straightforward, and I think that now that cities, especially our neighbors and other jurisdictions, are starting to wrap their heads around what got approved in June, what are they going to do in November, we'll learn in the coming weeks what other agencies in the county are looking towards as well. And I think that might be another reason to try to put that third meeting or fourth meeting back on the calendar to talk about this, because we will learn more. As our finance director shared, in doing this research, we learned that a lot of agencies, the business tax and a gross receipts tax is where they're focusing their effort. And candidly, they probably believe that residents will vote to tax the business. Eventually, we'll all pay for it when we shop at those businesses, but that's where a lot of cities are focusing their effort. And so I know we haven't talked about us considering that now, but those are some of the things that I think we'll hear in the coming weeks or next month about what other agencies are doing to go after the revenue.
I think I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you. That's, and I suspect this is where you were headed too, Mr. Cole. That might be a compelling reason to bring them forward. or maybe not, but that's a compelling reason. I wouldn't, to bring the issues forward for the council to understand and possibly take action if we see that other agencies are lining up for it. We would want to be certain that we're prepared. And so, given what the city's manager's response is, we may for sure the parking, and then some of the use tax and maybe some of the others. I'll let the city manager decide. Come forward so that we're prepared, and also come forward for potential action in the event that between now and then we see other agencies preparing to take action.
I know that South Pasadena is putting an $80 million bond issue on the ballot in November for roads. We've just gone to the voters on a bond issue for $200 million for our library. It seems like and then of course our school district and our community college have also done similar bond issues. So I think a bond issue for roads, while having a great argument for it, I think, again, we don't have enough time to lay the groundwork for it. But obviously, funding for roads is on the agenda. I'm mostly with you, Mayor, I would like to narrow it. I wouldn't like to bring this whole thing on the 13th, because we really need to move quickly if we're going to get on the November ballot. So I would limit it to the parking tax, the use tax, and I'm open to the business tax. I think it makes a lot of sense. The trouble is Pasadena has a reputation for being anti-business, fair or unfair, and it's probably a combination of both. And for us to suddenly say, we're going to change the way we tax businesses with 2 or 3 weeks for the Chamber of Commerce to react to it, and all the members who are not members of the Chamber of Commerce, which is the vast majority of our businesses, I think it's a really complex issue. I don't think most businesses understand the difference between gross receipts. And of course, one of the things about gross receipts is some businesses have a high margin, some have a low margin. And, Los Angeles, which has a gross receipts tax, has about 47 different levels. There's even, because I researched this in my previous roles, there's even a special gross receipts formula for furriers. Those are people that make mink coats. Not a lot of Los Angeles businesses still make mink coats, but it's still on the books.
So you know where they are.
And also for private interurban railways. There's a special formula for the gross receipts tax for them. I only bring that up because it makes the point that you have to figure out, because grocery stores famously make it on about a 2 or 3% margin, and some businesses, are 10 and 15%, and they charge them the same tax is pretty inequitable. So I would prefer we just bring forward the use tax and the parking tax, and not get into these other complex taxes that are valuable, but I just don't think we have the time to lay the groundwork. And again, the voter in November is going to have hundreds of millions of dollars spent on the billionaire tax, the Jarvis tax to cripple governments. Special interests are going to be throwing hundreds of millions of dollars, and our voters are going to be bombarded with that. And we don't have a group, as we did with the library, to really go out and champion this. With the library, we had a group of people who were willing to raise money and campaign for it. I don't know who is out there who's ready in a month to jump on this and compete with all of the other campaigns that are going to be going on in November.
All of that is helpful. I would make 2 comments. I think one is somewhat of a question, though, and a comment. I agree on the business tax, and I think that that's one that needs to be discussed and vetted before it shows up. And as the director said, there's a lot of people doing this, but there's a lot of people starting the work for 28, and maybe that's the conversation for 28, is spending 18, 24 months on that. But the other thing that I'm putting together through these conversations is that a general tax rather than a special tax is the ones that we're looking at. Because things like a parcel tax that we could draft in a specific way for streets, for fire and protection services, and tie it to the fire 10-year plan and things like that. We could do that in a very specific way, but then it needs 2/3 vote. And so what I'm getting from this group is that's not what we want to put forward now, but maybe in the future, that's what we want to do after more conversations and work through it. Focus on the parking tax. Oh, and then the other comment I was going to say, Councilmember, because you brought up the Jarvis measure. If measures from the state ballot that were put on by initiative are going to get pulled in November, they have to get pulled by the end of this week. So we should know by the end of this week if the billionaire's tax or the Jarvis measure aren't going to be on the November ballot. And so that leads me to my last question is if the Jarvis measure was pulled and you could do a real property transfer tax, is that one that we should also bring back in July to talk about if we believe that we'll have the bandwidth from a tax capacity to do that?
Well, I think that does make some sense, as the mayor is nodding, for two reasons. One, the only way it's going to be pulled is if it's a lower cap.
Right, and there was a bill introduced today.
That's what you were.
Yeah, that might be that negotiation piece.
So between the extremely low county tax and our ability to bridge whatever that margin might be, that might be a relative no-brainer. I don't think that deal will happen because I don't think the Jarvis people will compromise. But that's just my personal assessment, and we'll know one way or the other, as you say, in a week. So let me make a motion that we direct the staff, request from the staff to bring to the July 13th council meeting more specific recommendations on the potential for a use tax, a parking tax, and a real property transfer tax in the case that the Jarvis measure does not go forward. Otherwise, I think it's a big cloud over that. If that makes sense.
I second that. I mean, and I'll just ask the city manager, based on maybe, I guess, polling that the city, or appetite that the city has already, went out for and what we've seen, do we have an idea of how a sales tax would do?
We don't have an idea, but I know that we have done community outreach and conversations / polling for years and years and years. And it's reasonable to believe that the sentiment of the community is if we're being transparent and using these funds for the right thing, that there's probably a good possibility that a general tax measure could be supported. But bridging that gap from 50 to 2/3 is always really challenging. As the council member Cole noted, the library needed the library community group to carry a lot of that work. And in 2/3 measures, you often need some people willing to carry that effort. And sometimes that's labor, sometimes that's community groups, sometimes that's other things. But I think it's reasonable, certainly reasonable, that a 50% majority would pass, especially if it's unanimously supported by the council. I think that would say a lot as well.
Okay. Well, I second your motion.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, should we have a vote on?
Yeah, but before we, is there anything else? No, okay.
I do have one other thing. It says these things are in progress, right, on the presentation, I think, and some are planned. When will that be coming back to us, or will they come to finance before they get fully implemented?
The first and second ones are done. The third one is done, right? Yeah, PRCS programs and field usage is the one that's still being worked on. All the other ones are basically done or off and running.
Okay, and what about the ones that are planned?
So depending on, so going to the next slide.
Like the animal licensing fee. We just received a significant increase from the Humane Society, and we've got to figure out a way to pay for that. Significant, and I can assume that those increases are going to steadily go up every time we sign a new contract with the Humane Society or any organization that is, working with animals in our community. I just want to know where we are at with these items.
Yeah,
and
so
will they come back to us.
I can speak to the animal licensing one. Public Health Director Carmona and myself, we just started having conversations with Pasadena Humane about that, and seeing how those fees could be incorporated to help mitigate costs going into the future. So we're just starting with discussions now, but perhaps by next fiscal year, we can have some more thoughtful plans, and we can continue to keep the council informed as we work through that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. There was one other one that I considered to be low-hanging fruit, and that's recovering our costs on credit cards.
We passed that.
Oh, did we? Okay, okay. It was
Over my objection.
over your objection. Yeah, and you're still here.
I'm still here. Do you have a way to get rid of me, Mr.
No,
Mayor?
no, not at all, Mr. Cole. Okay, I forgot that.
Yeah, no, I thought it was nickeling and diming our residents, but I understand the argument in favor.
See, I gave you an opportunity to repeat that. Well, it's cost recovery, and so, okay. With that, are there any objections to the motion? Seeing none, the matter is approved.
When that comes to us, could you let us know how our last sales tax was doing with PUSD and our transfer to PUSD? We had the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, meeting is adjourned.
No, because it's been called for